Do you have difficulties with what kind of transition words or phrases to use in your presentation? If that's you, then please continue watching. Hi guys, this is Kelly. Today I'm continuing my series on business presentations in English. And today's topic is connecting/linking phrases and sentences. I know that in presentations, just putting the right connecting words, linking words is very important because it makes your presentation just be in the flow, and just using those words correctly can really help the audience follow the flow of your presentation. So today I'm going to talk about some transition connecting words and phrases that you can use between the slide. Okay, so first of all, let me introduce a phrase that you can use between the introduction part and the body part. And this phrase is very popular, so you may be familiar with this already. This phrase is called without further ado. Without further ado. This means without any delay or immediately. So this is a great phrase to use when you are done with your introduction and now you are about to move on to your body part. So when you're done with your introduction, you can say, all right, so without further ado, let's dive into the main topic for today's presentation. So that's how you can normally use it. Again, this is a great phrase to use before you go into the main topic of the presentation. Okay, now next up, let's talk a little bit about some phrases or sentences that you can use between the slides. So obviously the most popular phrase or sentence that you can use when you're going from one slide to another would be, let's move on to the next slide. Let's move on to the next slide. Or you can also say, moving on to the next slide, moving on to the next slide, and then you will most likely talk about the topic for the next slide. So that is the most common way of transitioning between slides, and this is totally fine and this is great. I mean, I do this all the time as well. However, the thing is, you do not want to include this exact same phrase between every single slide. That can make it a little weird. I mean, I've had this experience when I was working for my previous company. There was this guy who had like 100 slides to present, and he didn't have a lot of contents for each slide. So he would just mention a little bit about one slide and then just say, let's move on to the next slide. And then he would mention a little bit and then say, let's move on to the next slide. So overall, he said like, let's move on to the next slide, like 99 times. And people started laughing at the end because he was saying that same phrase so many times. So what I would like to suggest is that you might want to change it up a little. So moving on to the next slide, let's move on to the next slide is a great phrase, but you can also consider doing something like this. You can summarize the previous slide and then connect to the next slide. This would work in a situation where you have a couple of slides with a certain flow. Okay, so let's say you have one slide which talks about the sales performance for last year, and you have another slide that talks about areas for improvement or rooms for improvement. So you can say, now that we've looked at the sales performance for last year, now let's take a look at the areas for improvement for next year. So here what I did was to summarize the previous slide and then connect it to the next slide. So this is helpful in some cases. I mean, this is not applicable for all of your slides. Another phrase that you can use in a situation like this is which brings me to my next slide. Which brings me to my next slide. Let me show you how you can use this phrase using the same example. Again, the first slide talks about sales performance for year 2018, and the next slide talks about focus areas for year 2019. So you would go over the first slide like this. Product A, which is one of our strongest products, met the sales target in year 2018. Product B, although we put a lot of effort into developing this new product, it didn't get a positive feedback from the market. Product C did great in Q1 and Q2, but its sales was stagnant in Q3 and Q4. Which brings me to my next slide on key focus areas for year 2019. You can see that I connected the two slides using the phrase, which brings me to my next slide. So if you have a couple of slides that talks about a similar concept, and if there's like a cause and effect type of thing, then you might want to consider putting this into use. Alright, so this concludes my video for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. If you're interested in watching more business English related contents, how to write awesome resumes and cover letters, and your interview tips and tricks, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And also, please don't forget to hit the like button. Alright, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys real soon. Bye!